Hey, welcome to another bingo tutorial, this one on item inventory slots, and specifically for the goal to fill 20 item inventory slots, which is a very intimidating goal when you first look at it, but once you start to pack it down a little bit, it's not as bad as you think, I promise. There are 24 item inventory slots total, so when you're thinking about filling 20 of them, you really just have to think about which 4 not to fill. The other thing to know is that you don't have to fill them with the actual items. You can, but it's going to be pretty long. You can definitely exploit, and it's highly recommended to put a lot of bottles over many of these slots. So what this really ends up being is kind of a knowledge base little test in terms of whether you know how RBA works. If you're watching these videos already, then you could probably have enough time to watch Danny B's long form video on RBA. But again, as sort of a summary, there is an item sequential table of items with indices here, which mostly corresponds to how the item screen here looks, but there's a couple exceptions, being that the Farore Ocarina and the hookshot share an item, and that ends up playing a major role in what you RBA. Because if you RBA anything in this first row here, like when you RBA bombs in C right, when you're doing the trade quest for Kojiro to get bomb drops, you have to first RBA the bomb icon in C right. And that's because when you RBA bombs on C right, it put a bottle on the bombs. But after the Ocarina, the Farore Ocarina, which shares 2 items with 1 slot, it gets offset by 1. So if you ever accidentally RBA bomb choose on C right, you're going to delete your hookshot. Same with the hookshot. When you RBA that, you put a bottle on the ice arrow slot. And then you can apply that same logic for every item after the hookshot / longshot. If you RBA that on C right, it'll go 2 items to the right. So that's actually very useful for filling item inventory slots, because the bean is very easy to get as child. And if we actually put something on this slot, like a bottle, which is often the case, then you can fill the item inventory slot without actually watching the full light arrow cutscene. And so the same thing applies for a lot of these items in the third row. Everything's going to be off shifted to the right too, which is often very useful. The fairy spells put items on Lens of Truth and bottle 2. And then it's also very convenient that GZ also puts these items in the order that they are in the item index table. So this is also something that you see a lot. When you RBA bottle, empty bottle, it puts something 2 slots to the right in bottle 3. When you're doing filled 4 bottle slots, if you RBA the red potion, you'll put something on the 4th bottle slot. And that still applies for these 2 as well. If you go adult without the child egg, which in this goal, if you get both eggs and you're adult, the child egg's going to hatch first, then you're going to try to wake up Talon, and it's still going to be an egg. That's a little trap to worry about. But if you're doing the trade quest, you can just RBA the blue potion after trading in the odd mushroom for 100 rupees, and buy a blue potion, which will RBA over the child trade slot. Doing all this as adult, as you're waiting for the egg to hatch, is a great time to RBA many of these slots. You'd have to be careful. The bean is a great one to RBA, but if you don't know equip swap, you'll want to do that as child before you go adult. And so, yeah, again, you're looking for the 4 slowest slots to not fill. And in a lot of cases, you're going to be doing the Poacher Saw RBA. That's my recommendation to go to. And you're probably going to be skipping Din's Fire, because you won't be going back in time. Fire Arrows is a little bit tricky. Boomerang can be a quest unless you're in Jabu. And then it's a question of whether you skipped Bottom of the Well and you didn't get Lens of Truth, then you might not be able to RBA the Hammer slot. And then it might look kind of like this. One other thing I want to definitely highlight here is that the bow slot looks like a very long slot you have to fill, right? Because you have to do all of Forest Temple. But the thing is the following. If you actually dupe over one of the elemental arrows, unlike other items where it actually puts a bottle on that slot, in the case of ice arrows, so I'm using bottle on B because that's the most convenient. This is a frame that will work. This is an old trick, but it won't actually work in this case because I'm doing it on the B button. But say I was, and I'll just do this again. Say I tried to catch with the bottle on C left. If I just switch that bottle to be on where the ice arrows used to be, it'll put a bottle onto the bow with ice arrows. and that actually puts a slot on the bow instead of the ice arrows. So that is very useful in that you can get 2 slots for 1 basically when you go to GTG. You get the ice arrows, and then you can go and get a bottle slot as well. It's also useful to get bomb tubes if you didn't get that in bottom of the well. Okay, so that's nice and all. It's sort of the general overview. So I'll just sort of talk a little bit more about what your route might look like. Again, it's very useful to do the Poacher Saw route because you can get the fairy spells and also you'll be able to get the blue potion. But for the most part, you can just Aqua Escape as normal with Sword Shield or Stick, and then make sure to grab this bean. It's going to be really useful to get 2 slots for the light arrows and the bean, of course, and then you can just proceed as normal. It is possible to skip Slowest Lullaby and the trade quest if you skip all 3 of either 3 fairy spells and fire arrows, or you get other items that put a bottle on top of the fairy spells, like Longshot puts a bottle on Farore's Wind slot, and the Hammer puts a bottle on the Neighbor's Love slot. So if you're in Water Temple or Fire Temple, then you might be able to do that. But just looking at this screen here of all the items, typically you get a stick, then a bean, just get a single bottle, and then go adult. Let me actually tell about one other thing that's useful to do as adult for this goal, which is after you get the egg to leave CAC, instead of doing the typical Ganon's Castle reset, and actually head over to Lost Woods. Turns out that you actually have quite a bit of time, not only to RBA, but also to get the Ocarina during this time. It was found recently, in the last year or 2, that because the time of day passes as you're getting the Ocarina, it's actually a pretty good investment to get it if you need Ocarina, but Aqua escaped his child, to get it during this egg hatch, and you don't need Ganon's Castle. So that's also useful in goals like Big Goron Sword, where you need Ocarina to play a bunch of Sun Song, and especially the item inventory slot goal. So in this other cutscene, I'll talk about the typical order of items that you get if you're doing this goal with the Poacher Saw RBA, which from the Essentials video is often the route that you're doing. So again, if you are RBAing as adult, you will RBA the empty bottle to get a bottle on bottle 3. You will get RBA the bombs. Of course, you'll have the egg as well. Then you'll get the hook shot. And you will be doing the adult trade quest, and you can buy a red potion during that time. You can also RBA the hook shot to get the ice arrow slot. You can sell some bugs. Maybe you sell this bug too, and it ends up being the blue potion, which RBAs on top of the child trade slot. We just watched this cutscene, so we got the fairy Ocarina, and at some point in Shadow Temple, Dampy's Grave, you got you RBA'd the bean slot, so you got the ice arrows, and let's assume that you got the Poacher Saw, so that you're able to get 2 fairy spells, and RBA those 2 as well. RBA Farore's Wind puts a slot on FW, and RBA Neighbor's Love puts a slot on bottle 2. RBA of Red Potion puts a bottle on slot 4. So with all those things, once everything's said and done, the other last trip is to GTG, where you can get bomb chews and the actual ice arrows so that you can put a bottle on the bow slot. And let's see where we are after all that. In this case, we would only need 1 more slot because we are missing 5. And maybe the easiest generally is maybe either as child or as adult to go into Deku Tree and get Slingshot, or maybe get fire arrows if you need it. And again, it's very row dependent because there's so many possibilities of slots and things that you can RBA. But hopefully this was a good explanation. Again, there's many possibilities. You don't need to have Zelda's Lullaby, but it just happens to be easiest. If you have Saria Song, Goron Bracelet, you could go and get Child Magic, get Din's Fire. If you're in Jabu, if you're in Water, if you're in Ice, if you're in Fire Temple, then you have a lot of possibilities for slots that you normally fill. So it's a lot to think about, but again, it's not too much execution. I didn't show any trick. It's mostly just knowing how RBA works, a little trick about duping over an elemental arrow to get the bow slot, and just navigating the menu is the tricky part. So it's kind of the final test in terms of bottles and an RBA that's not related to the trade quest. So hopefully that was helpful. I may do more of these related to individual goals, or maybe other people do it too. It's been great to see people helping newer bingo players in anticipation for the rookie bingo tournament. So hope to see you bingoing out there. See you later. Thanks.